Hey girl, it is that time of the week again. I am so happy to have you listening to the podcast today. I am going to be talking with you about living in the gap and living in the gain. I'm currently reading Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan's book, The Gap and the Gain, again, because I absolutely love it. It's one of my faves. And I wanted to tie this in to my biggest regret in my journey to freedom. Grab a notebook and a pen, friend. There's going to be some things you're going to want to jot down. Here we go. Hey girl, welcome to the Her Best Self podcast. I'm Lindsay Nickel, former competitive figure skater and perfectionist, turned God-led imperfect boy mom and digital CEO. If you find yourself constantly thinking about food and wondering if you'll wake up one day free from the obsessive thoughts and behaviors controlling your life, then I've created this podcast for you. Because I know exactly what it's like to be a downright hot mess, trapped in a destructive cycle of disordered eating. I finally found freedom, and you can too, girlfriend. So if you're ready to heal your relationship with food and body and break the chains of control and show up in your best health, then grab your favorite Tarjay journal and let's get to it. So you can start living your best life as your best self. Hey sister, as I'm recording today's episode, I just want to tell you off the jump that we just got back from church. I have a house full of boys that are playing video games, and my husband is outside mowing the grass, and I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take this chunk of time to pour into you, sis, because I am just so warm feeling in my spirit right now. I just received so much goodness as we are leading up to Easter Sunday. Our church is doing a wonderful series that is just talking about forgiveness and just what Jesus had to go through to forgive our sins, ultimately. And so today's episode is coming just from my spirit to yours, because I want to talk about living in the gap versus living in the gain. What was heavy on my heart as I was sitting today in church was just some regrets that I have in my life. And I don't want to use the word regret very strong. I guess the reason why I'm here doing what I'm doing is God has turned the pain of my eating disorder and my past into my ultimate purpose. And I truly feel that. But one of my biggest shortcomings, my biggest sorrows, if I could go back in time to my younger self in my journey to freedom, it was constantly living in the gap. I want to explain to you the difference between the gap and the gain. If you're not familiar with this book, it is The Gap and the Gain by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. You'll want to check it out. I'm actually rereading it again. It's one of my favorites. But when you're living in the gap versus living in the gain, it is this powerful concept that describes two fundamentally polarizing ways and views that you can measure your progress and your experience in life. And when you're living in the gap, you're constantly measuring yourself against an ideal or this perfect version of where you think you should be. And you're focusing on the distance between your current reality, where you are right now, and your ideal state. And that is a gap because you're constantly focused on where you need to go. And this creates a persistent feeling of falling short, regardless of how much you've already accomplished. And some of my episodes lately have been based around this concept, like never feeling enough, the perfectionism, all of it, because I feel in my heart that you right now today, friend, are living in the gap. And that is not a con. I feel like the default mechanism for all of us is to live in the gap, constantly striving, constantly wanting to be better versions of ourselves. And while that's not wrong, it's in that gap that we are constantly beating ourselves up and measuring ourselves against a perfect ideal. And you weren't made to be perfect. And if you're living in the gap, here are some things that you might be focusing on. How your body doesn't yet look how you want it to. How there's meals you struggle with and you're constantly focused on those versus good things that you know in your heart are a good right next step. Finishing dinner or having dinner with your family. How others seem to be progressing faster than you are is living in the gap. And how you still have all these thoughts around food and you just haven't arrived yet, this is living in the gap. This gap thinking creates a sense of never being enough, never doing enough, because you're constantly comparing your current reality to a glamorized endpoint that you haven't yet accomplished. Now, living in the gain means measuring yourself backward. It's looking at the distance that you've traveled from where you started rather than how far you still have to go. And it focuses on progress. It focuses on growth and what you've already accomplished. And some of those examples, if you're living in the gain, might be you've been able to start embracing foods that once scared you. You've decreased a little bit of time that you think about food compared to 6 months ago. Or your mental energy you've reclaimed, maybe in some areas of your life. If you're further along in your recovery journey, maybe you have some of these gains. But if you're just starting out and you are struggling, and that's why you're listening to this show, then you are living in the gap. And living in the gap, sis, creates perpetual dissatisfaction. It creates anxiety and stress, and it creates a sense of struggle. When we think about this rule, it's very simple. And Dr. Benjamin Hardy talks about it in the book. And he says, the person who fails the most will win. If I fail more than you do, I will win. Because in order to keep failing, you've got to be good enough to keep playing. And that is this concept of like shifting from the gap thinking to gain thinking. And I'm not even talking about weight gain. When I think about my biggest sorrow, I think about how long I spent living in the gap. And I still do in times in other areas of my life, right? I'm a human being. Like, we are all human, and these things can become repetitive for us to learn over and over again. But when I look back on my journey to conquer my anorexia, my biggest regret was that I was so focused on what I lacked that I lost what I had. And when you focus on what you have, you actually gain what you lack. I didn't do that. I spent so much time thinking about this ideal that was a constant moving target, thinking about where I wasn't yet, and thinking how hard and high the mountain seemed to continue to get, and how I wasn't even halfway up it. And it was a constant struggle for me. If you're measuring yourself against that ideal future state that you haven't reached yet, you're focusing on what you lack. But if you start measuring yourself against where you started, then you can see how far you've come. And this is so important. I was so fixated on needing to be there, needing to cross the finish line, needing to have arrived, that I would look around at other people and think I was always going to be stuck. One of my biggest mistakes was missing the blessings in the mess. And he saved me from myself. And God's watching over you right now too, sis. And he's saving you just by having you listen to the show, however you found the show. Everything that I give out on the show is my personal experience, my personal passion, because I know that if I can recover, anyone can, point blank. I feel like it took me longer because I wasn't in it for the long game. I just wanted to get through it. And if I had thought, okay, recovery is inevitable for me, freedom is just around the corner. If I had thought like that, then I would have lived more in the gain, acknowledging the small victories that I was doing and celebrating the progress and finding meaning in the struggle versus constantly fixating on where I wasn't yet or where I messed up. I would have weeks of doing the hard things and literally doing the hard things, because you and I both know that the hardest thing is knowing what you should be doing and not doing it, not taking action. And if you're there, I see you. And to solve that problem, sis, you just need some accountability, and you need to start believing that you're capable. That's where one-on-one private coaching can come in for you, because there are principles and frameworks around things that I have learned not only in my experience, in my own journey, but since then in becoming a professional in this space and knowing how to coach you through this. And if you're there, that is what you need. You need a holding hand. My biggest regret was almost missing the blessing in the mess. And if you're there right now, I'm not saying that I would ever want to go back to that place. God knows I wouldn't. But I wish I would have been in it, like been in the specific moments that I was too busy looking for the next. I wish I would have known that if recovery was inevitable for me, I could choose how I wanted to be in that day. I could choose the turning point. I could choose to recognize the patterns that were no longer serving me. That's exactly why I do what I do here, because it is a choice. Every single day you have a choice to focus on how you're lacking, to focus on your gaps, or to focus on your gains. And that is what is going to get you to freedom. And so when I think back on it, I think about if I had known then what I know now, how would I have shown up differently? And if I knew that recovery wasn't optional for me, if I lived every single day like it was not optional for me, it was going to happen. I just had to keep walking forward. If I truly believed that, I think I would have enjoyed the process. I really do feel like I would have enjoyed the process because I would have nourished and felt like, you know what? I don't have to feel super good about gaining weight right now, but I can know that on the other side of this, my recovery gains are going to be so much more than weight. I'm completely shifting my life. I'm finding deeper meaning and purpose through the struggle. Not only that, I'm building resilience against these negative coping mechanisms that have served me for so long, and I'm creating an emotional intelligence within myself while also discovering connections with other people. And it would have been eye-opening to me. But instead, I spent majority of my time, woe is me, and if I go back into my journals, I definitely lived in the gap. And I'm not telling you that to, because if you're there right now, I get it, I lived it. I'm not telling you that to create this doldrums environment. I'm telling you that to give you some inspiration, because while I still almost miss the blessings in the mess, I learned to shift and start creating these milestones and honoring my journey that allowed me to see how far I'd come. And that's actually what living in the gain is all about. Being in the gain, according to Dan Sullivan, means you measure yourself backwards against where you were before. You measure your own progress, and you don't compare yourself against where you haven't yet gone. When you're in the gap, you have an unhealthy attachment to something, and you feel like you need it. And therefore, it's literally a suffocation of something outside of you in order to be whole or to be happy. You have to get it. I kind of think about this as you need $1 million. You need that person's approval. You need to find freedom. You need to be a certain weight, or you need to be a certain size, or you need to find love and not disappointment from this person in your life. But the problem with need is that it comes from this internal dissatisfaction that cannot be resolved unless you choose literally to surrender it, to change the script and go, I want this. Like, this is what I want. And if I live in a place of this is what I want, then I'm grateful for where I've been. I'm focusing on how far I've come. I'm focusing on the small gains. Some actionable tips that you can take away if you're currently struggling with living in this gap-like thinking is journal and identify your personal gains. And sit with yourself and say, am I living in the gap as though I'm constantly chasing what I haven't yet experienced? Or maybe I at one point have gone through recovery and now I'm in a relapse and I'm chasing this again of one day being recovered. The shift from gap to gain thinking is going to be transformative for you. It truly is, but you have to learn how to practice present moment gratitude. Part of this could be asking yourself what's better today than it was before, instead of what's still not working. I have clients that come to me all the time and I say, tell me your wins first in our sessions. And then I ask them about their challenges so that we can work on tangible things in session to give them that level of accountability that is going to get them crushing it. But if we're constantly focusing on those challenges, we're focusing on what's still not going right in your life. And when you focus on that, nothing's going to go right in your life. But when you focus on what was better today than it was yesterday, there's this tiny shift that happens in your mind. Your mind starts searching for evidence of what was better today. And those tiny little wins add up to freaking milestones, friend. To milestones. So I'm not saying I would go back in time and change the way that I did my recovery. I'm just saying that if I was living it right now, I would choose to start measuring my progress backwards. And that's my gift to you today. How can you look at where you are right now and look at where you were 6 months ago and go, maybe I'm a little bit further along than that. Maybe I'm doing something like listening to Lindsay's show that is helping me move one step forward. Maybe I'm not completely free, but you know what? I'm just not there yet. I'm not there yet. If I constantly am searching for that thing to create fullness or happiness or wholeness, I'm not ever going to find it. And that's the truth. So sis, today I just want you to think about this concept. Are you living in the gap or are you living in the gain? Because life is so much better when you start living in the gain. What are your gains this week? What are those little things that you have been just kind of brushing under the rug, saying they're not that big of a deal? And what is something that you can challenge yourself so that you can start doing to start embracing the gain? I want you to think about those things today, and I want you to apply it in your life this week as you navigate the last week of the month. Let's no longer live in the gap. Let's define that the gap is no longer for us. The gap serves a purpose. Yes, the gap allows us to be humbled when we get to that place that we want to get, because we can go back and remember how we felt when we weren't yet there. But if you knew that your dream of recovery freedom was 100% already granted, if you knew that God himself came down here and said, my friend, this is already done for you. I have granted you freedom from this. What would you do differently tomorrow? I want you to measure your progress backwards. I know it's counterintuitive from society or goal setting or doing all those things, but that is how you can honor your journey. And that is how you will not miss seeing the blessings within your mess. I love you, sis, and I hope today's episode has given you something to think about. I encourage you this week to really hold on to this powerful concept. Until next time, bye for now. Hey, sister friend, before you go, I wanted to give you a personal invitation. Right now, I'm taking just a couple of clients for the spring, and I would love to work with you. If you're looking to move out of the gap and into the gain, if you are tired of being tired, if you are so tired of thinking about when you're going to eat next, if you're allowed to have it, and if you will ever go a day without obsessing over the food that is on your plate or the exercise that you have to do in order to earn that food, I want you to come into my world. I would be honored to help guide you through this journey, because I believe that if I can conquer this, so can you. You can find more information about how we can partner together and how I can serve you out on our website at herbestself.co.